if you're not aware, Pulsechain and Pulsex are going to be coming out very soon. And one of the things that I'm interested in is trying to understand demand. So I've been tracking and taking a look at how these two, Pulsex and Pulsechain, are doing in terms of Telegram growth, the number of views on YouTube when you search for a certain word, the number of creators who are creating content on YouTube with those in the title or the thumbnail, hashtag usage on Instagram versus hashtag usage on TikTok for Pulsex and Pulsechain, as well as their website ranking. Because there's millions and millions of websites. How are their websites actually doing? Because those are the people who are actually interested. Similar to, let's say, the YouTube creators. That's effectively the media, right? We get to see, we have seen over the last 24 months, a great example, like 30 months, how manipulative the media actually is. And when it comes to Pulse and Pulsex, when you understand how many videos are coming out, you get an idea of what the media is, right? Because legacy media doesn't have any effing idea what Pulsechain is. And then the last thing is a bonus. We're going to take a look at Google Trends, the largest search engine in the world, and two, the second largest search engine in the world, YouTube, to take a look at search history for Pulse and Pulsex. Very interesting. And we're going to have, at the very end, we have a bonus how those two look relative to Uniswap. So, with all that being said, if this is your first time here, what's good? My name is Sam. For those of you who are returning, it's good to frickin' see you. If anybody wants to support the channel, there's some links down below, or you can jump over to Twitter and say what's good on Twitter and help me win this contest to win 50,000 hacks, right? That's actually the wrong tab I meant to click on. So, well, you just got the preview right there. If you want to help me win that contest, if you want to help me beat this guy Motley, the investor over on Twitter, he's got 14,300 followers, and I'm at like 2,900. In a 90-day challenge, you can jump down below over to Twitter, say what's good, retweet something, follow, and go from there. But let's get into the video. So what we did is take a look at the number of people in their Telegram group for Pulsex and Pulsechain to see if we can track that over time, and also the growth of those. And then on YouTube, getting an idea of the total number of views. To do that, you come into search, say Pulsechain, click on the month filter, and then over here by view count, and you get to pull up the videos here. Now, the videos only count if there's Pulsex or Pulsechain in the title of the video. Now, when we come over to get the gauge of creators, right? Because the first one's telling us what is the audience watching. What is the audience watching when it comes to views on YouTube? Are they more interested in one topic or the other? Yes, they're super interrelated, right? So they're going to probably be very close. But what are people watching, right? If one is, something's happening, right, then that's going to be the one that more people are paying attention to. And we get to see that over time because I've been tracking this for a while. When it comes to creators, we go in here, again, Pulsechain over the last 24 hours, and we go to relevance. So over the last 24 hours, video and relevance, we count the total number of videos that have been produced with Pulse or PLS or the logo in the thumbnail and or in the title. We count those. We put those all into a spreadsheet. Now on Instagram, we took, excuse me, Pulsechain in terms of usages for Pulsechain or Pulsex to get an idea of how many people are talking about these on Instagram, and then also cool now that I'm tracking it to see the growth of this over time. On TikTok, we get to see the actual number of views, right? This is kind of like the, I don't know why it's asking me to do that. This is giving you a kind of idea of like the impressions, so to speak, or I don't know how they actually classify what a view is. Maybe they have to watch 5 seconds of it or something, but there's been 13.5 million views on Pulsechain. I mean, that's a lot, right? On my YouTube channel that you're watching this on, I have maybe like 1.5 or 1.7 million views in its lifetime, and I started that, almost a decade ago, right? 9 years ago or something. The next place, I found this one super fascinating too. So this is SimilarWeb. They do data analytics, and you get to punch in a website, and then they rank that website relative to all the other websites. So globally, Pulsechain is ranked 90,000, right? So their website. And then in the United States, it's 42,000. Now, why is that like important? Why does that matter? Well, because there's only going to be people who go to the website who are actually interested in learning about it, right? If you're not interested in something, you're not going to go to Chick-fil-A.com or whatever, any website, unless you actually have a greater degree of interest than just, Pulsechain, right? You actually have to do something to go to the site. So that's kind of interesting. We're going to compare those two between Pulsex and Pulsechain. And I took all of this data that I was just showing you and I put it into a spreadsheet. And then after we get through this, we're going to take a look at Google Trends for YouTube search volume and Google search volume, right? Those two largest websites. The two largest search engines in the world. We get to see, let's just do the difference in those two across the board to see how we are doing. When we take a look here, we get to see both telegrams are growing, where Pulse is growing faster, which is interesting because I feel like we need a new metric besides Telegram, because I don't find it a productive use of time to spend any amount of time in Pulse. Chat on Telegram, maybe I should get in there and just start a video chat and just see where it goes and just try it. But I don't find it a super productive use of my time because there's so many people in there. But people are still joining both of those. They're joining more to the Telegram for Pulse than they are for Pulsex, which is interesting because that was not the case a week or two ago. You get to see the data here in front of us. The views on YouTube also basically holding steady. They just literally flip-flopped. So I don't know how. I think maybe next week's video we'll do this again. I think we're going to actually start to compare this to other chains, because I think, or dexes, because I think that's going to be a more fruitful use of our time for future videos to do that. So if you want to catch those videos when they come out next week, they're going to be comparing like Pulse to a different exchange a different chain, and Pulsex to a different DEX of some sort, because I think that's going to be it will give us a better idea of like what's going on than comparing look at these data by itself and relative to its past. I think comparing it to something else that's actually in the wild will be a better use of this. So the number of creators, I always find this one interesting because I fucking make videos and I understand the effort that goes into creating content on YouTube, and this is basically the media, and we understand how the media works. The media shapes the narrative. The media infects people's minds, right? Now that could be a good infection or it could be a bad one. So just understanding where this is going is pretty interesting. If you have thoughts on which chain we should compare it to, let me know down below in the comments. If you say Ethereum, like Pulsechain is just not going to even be on the map relative to Ethereum, just because Ethereum is so incredibly popular. It's just not there yet. Maybe in 6 months or a year or two it could be, but at this point it's just not going to be there. Instagram is interesting that there's actually more hashtags for Pulsex, but when you dive into the Pulsex on Instagram, it is a lot more cloudy. So I would think that this number is actually lower for Pulsex. And we get to see here the pulse chain is actually growing at a faster rate. So I don't think this number here is a little cloudy. I wouldn't say this is, yes, people have used more of the hashtag Pulsex. Yeah, I do think it is a little bit more cloudy than Pulse Chain is. And we get to see Pulse Chain actually growing faster. Will this surpass this? Are you guys using more hashtags now? This is on TikTok. There's a boatload more views for Pulse Chain, which makes sense because Pulse Chain came out with their sacrifice first before Pulsex did. 13.5. They grew 600,000 views in the last 8 days since we checked this. That's a lot. 600,000 views. Check this out too. 600,000 views over here is not necessarily the same as it is over here, where we say 175,000 roughly, right? And the reason is because this number here is only on the top 10 videos. So I'm counting the top 10 videos that have been released over the last 30 days. So when you come into here, remember how I clicked over 30 days, and then you come over here and you click views, and then I count the top 10 videos here and add up those views. That's where this comes from. And it doesn't include the long tail. Over here, it does include the long tail, right? And it does include a lot more data here. If there was a way to gather that, I would, but it's far too time consuming. So this 600,000 increase and 400,000 here in terms of views with the hashtag for Pulsex versus Pulse Chain. It's interesting. Wait until you see Uniswap versus Pulsex and Pulse Chain. Search volume on Google Trends. Very interesting data. We'll just leave it at that. On their website, pulsex.com versus pulsechain.com. Pulsex has their website is more popular. I'd also like to know down below in the comments which you're only allowed to pick one. Which project are you more bullish on? Pulse or Pulsex? I'll let you know when I get into the Google Trends what I'm personally more bullish on. Yes, obviously we understand you're bullish on both, right? But don't fucking write that answer. Like, which one are you actually more bullish on, and why? Because the why is going to be very interesting for people. Okay. So we have Pulse Chain is far more popular in terms of their website, and then in the United States, it flips. So this is worldwide. Worldwide, Pulsex is, say, winning relative to Pulse Chain. When we look at in just the United States, they're about the same, but Pulse Chain is more popular, 42,000th versus 44,000th, right? And interestingly here, when we come to this data is actually backwards, right? This should be like this minus this. So this is a bad thing. They dropped spots here. So this way it's actually aligned correctly. Pulse Chain lost 7,000 spots, where Pulsex gained 5,000. So there's a 13,000 spot difference between these sites globally. How do these rank up relative to, say, ADA or Terra or any other blockchain? This will be interesting. Check back next week for those videos. And here in the United States, both of these have gained a bunch of spots. Double for Pulse Chain. Pulse Chain, I don't know if I've highlighted this. Pulse Chain is on the left. Whoops. In all these things, in the gray, Pulse Chain is in the side. I forgot to mention that. And in the white columns, Pulsex is there. So this is super interesting to see how these are tracking, right? This is in the top 50,000 websites here in the United States. Remember, there's a boatload of websites. And these are people who are actually interested, because why would they spend any time on a website if you're not actually interested in it? That's why I also find the Google search volume very interesting, because these are people who are actually taking the time to search for Pulsechain or Pulsex. When you look at this, this is worldwide over the last 12 months on YouTube, right? This is up and to the right. It looks like it started to take off in mid-February and just trend up for Pulse. And the Pulsechain has been more volatile, but also it looks like it's trending up here. Another interesting data point here is the last 90 days. This is on YouTube. We get to see Pulse looks like it's got a clear trend. If you look at the blue line here, it looks like it's got almost a upward trend to it where you can't tell that is the case with Pulsex. So that's kind of interesting. And this is at the beginning of the period, Pulsechain had less search interest on YouTube, and at the end, just over this last couple days, Pulse has had more search interest. That's interesting. So let's go back here to the last 12 months and look at the web. Then we're going to add Uniswap on here and take a look at that. And as well as I'll tell you which project I'm more personally bullish on. So this is worldwide, 12 months, web search. Remember, the largest search engine in the world, something like 1 billion plus searches per day, right? And we get to see that Pulsex is more volatile in this. Obviously, Pulsechain came out first with their sacrifice, so you'd expect that. But when Pulsex came out, and when you think about Pulse, the DEX, Pulsex, is going to be how most people are going to interact with this, excluding like other protocols, because there's going to be a bunch of other protocols that are going to be launching on Pulse. But they're just obviously, hopefully they'll launch around the same time as Pulse or very shortly thereafter. But I'm not sure. Also, in your comment, let me know which project you're most interested in that is not Pulse or Pulsex. I'm curious. Over the last 90 days, very similar. I don't see a trend necessarily. Maybe a tiny bit of an uptick in Pulsechain. Pulsex, it looks like it's almost trending down slightly, even though Pulsex has had more search volume. It's because of these spikes here, which have caused that. But if you look at the blue, which is Pulse, over the last 90 days, searching, they came to basically close down to zero, both of these points here, and the close point they had here wasn't as far down in terms of the decrease in search volume, which is kind of interesting. It's also kind of interesting that, you know, the Canada and Brazil and a lot of Europe, as well as Mexico and what is this, Thailand, a lot of different parts of Europe, Finland, are more interested in Pulse, where all the areas in red, like Australia, Argentina, the United States, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, all the red spots are more interested in Pulsex. So that's kind of interesting. And this bright red, Argentina and Saudi Arabia, as well as Turkey, are far more interested in Pulsex than Pulsechain when it comes to the search volume. That's kind of interesting. I didn't know that. Now, which project am I more interested in? Well, we're going to talk about that in just a second after we pull up Uniswap. So I just wanted to take a look at this over the last 90 days to just see, like, Uniswap, like the most used DEX there is, the most popular decentralized exchange ever in the world, right? There's nothing more popular than Uniswap. How do these do relative to Uniswap, right? Because that's like the gold standard, right? And when you look at web search over the last 90 days for the three of these, you get to see, well, that's clearly the case. A complete and utter domination with Uniswap search volume versus the other two. it does look like there's a little bit of a trend down, right? If you just look at this first beginning portion versus where Uniswap is over here, and this is on Google. Now, do you think YouTube is going to tell the same story? Check this out. This is on YouTube. So this is interesting. The average search volume per day, it says 32, but this is just relative to the peak when I'm reading this number. 32, Pulsex, 30. There, and you get to see here, the yellow is Uniswap, very close in terms of search volume for both of these terms over the last 90 days. That's fascinating. And I am definitely looking forward to the next video where we compare these data to another chain and or DEX. So make sure you press the subscribe button and the bell notification. Now, Pulsechain or Pulsex. I personally am more bullish on Pulsex. I think that the way the buy and burn has been structured, that there is there's going to be a lot of buy pressure on Pulsex. So when I'm saying bullish, I'm talking about, like, I think they're both going to be successful, but from like a performance standpoint, I think Pulsex could be more successful. But I think initially there's going to be a lot of dumping, which is perfect, right? Amazing buying opportunity, because there's going to be a lot of people who FOMO into Pulse because they missed out on the sacrifice at the beginning, which is awesome, because if they're going to be selling Pulsex, amazing buying opportunity. But the way the buy and burn is set up, it's going to be creating, and I've done a couple videos on this, a little bit of selling pressure regularly for Pulse and Hex, and tremendous buying pressure for Pulse X. You can go check out those videos, but there is going to be created selling pressure on Pulse and selling pressure on Hex, where there's going to be a boatload of buying pressure on Pulse X. And that's just going to be buying. It's just going to be somebody coming to the market who has a lot of bags and just buying that shit every day. Every day they're just going to buy more. And that, to me, is more exciting than Pulse. I'm more bullish on Pulse. I think they're both going to do awesome. I'm going to be buying more of both, but I'll probably be getting larger amounts of Pulse X. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. Appreciate you guys. Don't forget to jump over to Twitter. Help me out. There's a link down below. Follow and press the retweet on something you found value in over there. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon. Peace.